Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Captain Logan Show. I am Captain Logan. Thanks a bunch for tuning in if you're watching this live, and thanks for watching after the fact if you're doing that as well. For the next hour or possibly a little bit longer, depending on how things go, I will be answering your questions, whatever it is you'd like to talk about. 3 weeks in a row, doing a straight-up open forum Q&A, not doing any kind of special theme show. We may get back to those down the road, but as I said last week, I've been hearing from a lot of people saying they kind of prefer it this way, and last week we had a bunch of questions we didn't have a chance to get to because of the sheer amount of super chats, which of course we really appreciate. So we're gonna do another just straight up general Q&A. Whatever you guys feel like talking about, that's what we're gonna do this evening. It's so nice to see everybody in the comments, and I want to say thanks always as well to my chat moderator and logo maker producer extraordinaire, Danny Nixon.
Hey everybody, how are y'all?
There he is. There's Danny Nixon, making it less awkward.
I wouldn't say that, but
how you doing, man? What's happening?
I'm good, man. I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm great. I just got done taking my kids out playing video games. We went to Dave & Buster's and played some Mario Kart and stuff like that. It was fun.
Nice. The closest Dave & Buster's we had was a couple towns over, and it closed a couple years ago, so I haven't been to a arcade/restaurant type of place like Dave & Buster's in a while. I miss those kind of places.
Yeah, we've got a few barcades around, and there was one that I used to go to all the time that I do trivia for and stuff that closed down last year, unfortunately. But we've got a couple downtown which are really cool that I go to every now and again. But the family-friendly ones are kind of few and far between, and so you're kind of stuck with the big kind of mega chain ones like Dave & Buster's. I guess I say the mega chains. I guess that's kind of the big one, and then there are some local things that different places have.
My college town, the comic book shop owner, he opened up a barcade right next to his comic book shop, and it was such a cool place to go. Like on Free Comic Book Day, they would have stuff that for sale, kind of like lined outside of both of the barcade and the actual comic book store, because they were at the same little strip mall type of area.
That's cool.
Yeah, so because they had a lot of people, because the line would literally stretch between the two because it was set up kind of perpendicular, and it was a really, really cool thing to go wait in line, get whatever stuff like your drinks or whatever while you're still in line, and then finish it before you went inside, because it's a comic book store and nobody wants spilled drinks on the free comic books. But it was really convenient.
Yeah, that's a really cool combination. I always kind of wonder about like coffee shop comic book stores, or if there is such a thing like a bar comic book store. I always thought it'd be kind of cool to open up a place like that. But then I would figure, you're selling things that are, made of paper and relatively expensive for things made of paper, and you might spill on them. But I didn't really hear a lot of horror stories about that when I was on the road trip for the Midwestern panels for the documentary we did a few years ago, where we went to a coffee shop that sold comics, and we also went to a salon that sold comics, and that also sounds like a place where accidents might happen, but I didn't really hear any horror stories.
Yeah, I would assume that places like Books A Million and Barnes & Noble wouldn't combine their stores with coffee shops if it was that big of a hazard. But for me personally, I just kind of freak out at the idea of people having open cups of like soda or whatever walking through a comic book shop.
True. I mean, I think it's a little bit different at a place like Barnes & Noble's, because it's a little bit more like off to the side. Like, yeah, you could bring a book over and sit at a table and read, but I don't see people at stores like that with like their food and drink all over the store. It's really kind of confined to one area.
Jeffrey Patron says, counting crypto drinks.
Thanks for the super chat there, Jeffrey. So the super chat, as always, is open. If you want to make sure that your question or comment is read on the show, you can send us a super chat, and just a couple bucks, however much you would like to donate, and we sure appreciate all of the support on the channel. Jason and I just shot a minibus this week, and by minibus, I guess I just mean it's shorter than what Eric and I do. It's not any fewer videos, but some of the videos are shorter than normal. I honestly expected it to be 2 or 3 hours. It's longer than that. It's at least 4. It might be closer to 5. So sans Eric, you guys are basically going to get an omnibus again over the next 3 weeks. I got the Captain's Log posted today to get the time-sensitive news stuff out. I'm sure a couple things that we talked about on that will come up tonight, and I didn't talk about as many things as I might have because of all the things that I've talked about on the Captain Logan show over the last couple weeks, but hopefully the full minibus will be up tomorrow. We've got a lot of fun reviews and things for you there, and a lot of that is me talking a lot and Jason occasionally filling in because he's 8 and doesn't entirely have his mind made up about a lot of things yet. Still kind of getting his head around this reviewing thing. But it was a lot of fun. He really enjoyed doing it, and he's hoping to come back again down the road. So a lot of fun, family-friendly things. People have been asking me about Death of Superman. I'm going to be tackling this on the next omnibus with Eric. So this has been out already since last week. Unfortunately, you won't see a review from us until it's been nearly a month that it's out. I'll say right now, I didn't love it. It's okay. That's my review of this movie right now at this very moment. Danny, have you seen this yet?
No, I've actually been holding out to hear what you had to say about it before I go into it. So I can kind of, since you're the Death of Superman expert, I wanted to.
Oh, don't call me an expert. I'm maybe a fanatic before I'm an expert with Death of Superman. Yeah, it adapts that story, and again, it's split into 2 movies, and we're going to get Reign of the Superman at the beginning of next year. It adapts that story more than Superman Doomsday did, but it makes weirdly some of the same mistakes. And one of the big things that kind of irks me about it is just we have to reestablish a lot of major Superman stuff instead of just jumping into the meat of it, and it puts us into a really generic Superman status quo. And I don't mean to sound like a purist where it has to be exactly like Death of Superman was, where you have bearded Lex Luthor and all of that, because I wouldn't expect that. It's not the same thing as Dark Knight Returns, where it's kind of out of continuity and it's very much its own thing. Personally, I would love that, but some of the changes did seem like kind of a change for the sake of change thing and trying to really genericify it. And I don't know. It's not different enough from what they did last time, where I don't completely understand what the point of doing it really even was. But I guess it kind of feels like the point of it is just so that we can do Reign of the Superman. So that might end up being, relatively great. I guess we'll find out. But yeah, it's kind of a setup movie that's not amazing or anything. But I didn't hate it. But I was, it wasn't what I want, certainly.
Well, that's disappointing because if this isn't good, we're probably never going to get an actual Death of Superman movie again after this in live action or animation.
No, Superman, you're not the only person that doesn't care about Death of Superman. It's very much a nostalgia thing for me. It's the thing that got me into comics. So I know I can be a little bit self-indulgent about it. It's a thing I talk about a lot, but it is one of my favorite things in comics. And I recognize its flaws. I recognize the period of comics we were in at that time. I recognize the fact that DC was doing other things that were maybe heads and shoulders story-wise above that story. Certainly Nightfall is a much better story and in a more meaty, layered thing. It's also a very different kind of thing. But I don't know. I have a real soft spot for it. It's like Batman '89. I can't get away from it. So yeah, really can't get away from
Batman '89.
Really can't get away from '89. I think there are a few super chats that we haven't chatted about yet. Yeah, Donnie St. Pierre says we missed a $5 super chat. No, I know they're there. We're going to get to them. It's time for answering questions right now. And let's do that, shall we, Danny? What are those super chats, sir?
Well, the first super chat from John Early. I wrote a fan fiction story because I had this idea in my head that just wouldn't go away.
That's a super chat. Well, sometimes you get those ideas that just keep you up at night, and you're not going to be able to get any sleep until you sit down and finally write it out. But yeah, that's cool. He didn't elaborate anymore. He didn't tell us what kind of fanfic it was, what the franchise was he was writing about. Just I wrote a fanfic.
Yeah, cool. I've had the ideas of doing the Batman fanfic of writing a chronology of from year 1 all the way to Death of Batman or something, but I'd never sit down and actually do it because that's really, really time, inclusive, having a whole lot to write if I wanted it to be good. And I'm not a writer, so I wouldn't be able to put my ideas down and just do it as well as I wanted to, like I could if I just talked about it with somebody. So I don't write fan
Where
fiction.
it's kind of an execution thing until you've had some experience. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't discourage anybody from writing, but but I mean, I have had that frustration too, where I'm like, well, here's this really fun idea I have that I don't think I can execute as well as maybe I could with some more experience, with a lot of research, maybe even as well as somebody else with the same idea might have done. You know, there are definitely things that I have skipped out on doing just because I'm like, that's cool, but I'm not the guy.
Yeah. The next super chat from Mr.
Yeah.
Lobato. Would Infinity War make more sense plot-wise if he was courting death rather than trying to sell himself as a hero?
Would it make more sense? I mean, kind of. The issue with Thanos in that movie is, and I've talked about this a lot, of course, is that his motivation's just not fleshed out enough, and I'm confused as to why he doesn't seem to be picking up on the basic logic of other ways he could accomplish what it is he's trying to accomplish. If he was courting death, it's a different story. I mean, that's the long and short of it, right? Is you could have told the he's courting death story and had the same problem of, okay, he loves death, why is that, right? So like, I don't know if that makes it make more sense. It's certainly what I would have liked to have had, but as I've said before, I just wanted to be won over. I'm okay with that change theoretically if you know, he's coming alive for me more on the screen, and I'm fully getting why he's doing what he's doing. We know there's a bunch of stuff that was left out that probably explains his motivation a little bit more. I mean, I say explains his motivation. I get why he's doing what he's doing. I'm just not. I just don't know enough about his background and his thought process. More his thought process, really.
Yeah, without rewriting the movie, I don't know if you can really
Exactly.
make the courting death thing fit in what they were trying to do.
I don't think you can, unless it's like it is in the comics, where getting rid of half the population of the universe is what she's telling him to do. That's a different story, and he's not going to be the same kind of sympathetic that they're going for. They want us to not be on his side, but of course appreciate what he's doing and see him as, in his mind, the hero of his own story. Comic book Thanos is more like worships death. He's more of a straight up evil kind of character.
Yeah, and I think they might have purposely went away from doing something like that, where he's doing it for somebody else to avoid any kind of like Dark Knight Rises comparisons, where the big bad that we're selling it on this is in some way more so doing it for someone else rather than doing it on his own volition. And I think that's
a really good point. Yeah.
I think those criticisms of that movie might have been in their head when they were writing this, and how they rewrote Thanos to be more of the sympathetic villain, where you're trying to get in their head and explain their motivation for doing it, rather so than doing the more comic book accurate thing, which I personally, from only reading the story once, find really interesting, to have a Thanos who's more so obsessed with getting this one person's attention than what he's actually out there doing. I think that's a really cool change of pace for a villain.
Yeah, it's a twisted love story, and or I guess even a twisted tragic love story, because she doesn't give him the time of day. But yeah, you can also tell that to make him interesting, right? Like, you look at the Dark Knight Rises thing, just because Bane is doing a thing for Talia doesn't mean that he had to be as undrawn as he was. The problem isn't that he is. I mean, you don't want him to just straight up be a henchman. The problem is that he doesn't have an ideology and a thought process of his own.
Yeah. BAG Studio says, "Hey, Cap and Danny, question: why is Geekvolution a gaming channel? Why are all the videos listed as gaming?"
So I've gotten this before, and the short answer is I noticed this once years ago and keep forgetting to change it. It's really funny that somebody asked that. Yeah, I don't see the category pop up that much, and every now and again I'll notice it and I'm like, oh, that's weird, everything says gaming. I think it's because the multi-channel network that we're with is Machinima, and Machinima is a gaming network primarily. You don't have to be a gaming channel to be with them, which is, of course, why years ago I was able to get in with that partner, with them as a partner. So yeah, you can change it, but you have to do it manually, and I think you have to do it on every single one of them. And I just never think to do that. So that would be why. Yes. So yeah, the easy answer is I have not been professional about this, and that means that there's like 3,000 videos that I got to go back at some point and toggle away from gaming. At least the ones that aren't gaming. But yes, clearly Geekvolution is not primarily a gaming channel because the one thing we really do with video games is called Cap Can't Play, and that shows you how much of not a video game channel we are.
I do like that you've got a Cap Can't Play theme or episode title, series title for the gaming channel. So anyone coming into that who doesn't really know is like, oh, this is ironic.
Yeah, and what's funny is I keep running into people who do have gaming channels and maybe even do that for a living who say, oh no, I'm terrible at video games. And I'm like, no, everything's relative, man. Like, not compared to me. Yeah. Like, don't say that. It drives you crazy. Dan's View says that all the time. Oh, I suck at video games. Shut up, Dan. Not compared to me, buddy. And I will go on record to say that. No, stop it, Dan. Just no, stop it.
The next question
How
from
are
American...
you at video games, Dan?
Awful.
Danny?
Awful. Not good. Like, the
Really?
few video games I play, like
Do you play much?
Arkham City, Arkham Knight, and the yearly WWE titles are the only games I play.
Oh, I forgot you're a wrestling guy.
Yeah. So I've got a whole Xbox
that
One
is-
sitting over here.
That is a big place where our interests diverge a bit then.
Yeah, you know Macho Man from Spider-Man, and I know him because he's one of the greatest wrestlers from the 80s and 90s.
That's not fair. I knew of him before that. I'm not a wrestling guy, but my dad watched wrestling when I was a kid. And hey, I'll throw one at you. I know who Doink the Clown is.
Nice.
So there, and I was like the Undertaker when I was a kid,
Yeah.
but I didn't watch it or anything, like regularly.
I had the honor of seeing the Undertaker at WrestleMania, and for those who don't know anything
That's
about
really
wrestling,
cool. Now, is it
Undertaker had
true? Is it true that you don't always know if it's the same guy?
no, Undertaker's always been the same guy.
It's always been the same guy. Okay.
There's the urban legend from dating back from the 90s because he had a thing where he broke his nose and had a mask over it that looked Phantom of the Opera-esque. Where people thought, oh, it's a different guy. And then shortly after that, they did a storyline where there was a separate Undertaker, and we were trying to figure out who the real one was. But no, it's always been the same guy playing the Undertaker since he debuted like close to 30 years ago.
Good to know. Well, thanks for that history lesson.
Yeah, for more wrestling related stuff on Geekvolution.
But I mean, it's, you know, we're what, in technically like the third generation of wrestling now. Like I have, or whatever it is. Like I have no idea who's wrestling now. Like,
yeah, like there's the golden age or so of the 80s. Then there's like the Attitude Era, like the peak of 97, 98, 99. And now we're kind of in this era where it's on a resurgence on the independent scene. Not to get too technical on this, because I don't think anyone on this channel really cares. But it's kind of growing
don't
up
say
again.
that. You'll have some people come out of the woodwork. I know, because I have heard from some wrestling fans. I know of at least a couple of regular Geekvolution viewers who keep trying to get me to watch wrestling.
If you want to make Cap watch wrestling, donate on the $20 pure on Patreon.
On Patreon, yeah.
No, to actually get back to the questions, Mr. Roboto has a super chat and says, will you play
Thanks, man.
Aquaman for the channel? Is there an Aquaman video game?
Say that again. Will I play Aquaman for the channel? I think there's a notoriously bad one from like the early 2000s, but I'm not sure what else we might be talking about. Try to make your super chats as specific as you can. Because sometimes we get things like this where I'm like, I'm not actually sure what we're talking about. But if you, we'll make sure and watch the chat. So if you can be more specific, we'll make sure and answer that more readily.
The next super chat from Mr. Cool 210. Do you think you will ever do a rewind on any more video games, such as Spider-Man PS4 when it releases?
I don't know if that'll be a rewind. That depends on what the story is like. I mean, it looks like a pretty story-intensive game, so that could happen. I don't have the rule that I do with Rewind, or the theoretical rule that I have on Rewind, Danny, of reviewing every superhero movie that was ever made, because back in 2009 that looked possible. But with video games, just because it's even because it's a story-driven game doesn't necessarily mean that I'll get to it, but it means that I'm probably interested if I can work it in somewhere. They're just really, really time-consuming. I don't know how I ever got Arkham City done. That was a really complex. I don't even remember how long that took. That had to have been a month and a half project. And I mean, I know it's been a while since I put up a Rewind, and I've got and I'm working off and on Daredevil, but that was one where I sat down for like a full several weeks straight, and that's all I worked on. So yeah, it's just I kind of want to make sure that it's stuff that people that enough people are interested in. That's probably like the main thing that will get me to do a video game, unless it's also just something that like I'm really, really intrigued by and want to talk about, because like I said, they're just really what am I trying to say? They just take a lot of time to make. So yeah.
Yeah, I had that same mind block earlier trying to find the word for time. I'm having that same blank now, trying to figure out the word for it's taking up a lot of my time.
Yeah, time intensive. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Anyway,
the next question is a super chat from Super Nerd. Have you ever read Kyle Rayner's Green Lantern run?
I haven't. It's interesting that you're asking that right now, though, because Eric was just talking to me about that yesterday, and the store he works at just got the majority of that run in, and he was thinking about getting it because that's his favorite Green Lantern, and he wants to read that. But I have not. I don't actually know anything about Kyle Rayner, but I know it's a lot of people's favorite Green Lantern. Yeah, time consuming. Thanks, Rock Band. I don't know what's wrong with us tonight, Danny. We just can't think of basic words.
Yeah, we're
Tune into the Captain Logan Show for lack of word choice.
From the published author.
But I always think better with a keyboard under my fingers. That's the thing, is this channel has turned into as much of a kind of a blog review channel as it is a written review channel, of course. And Danny, I've never thought I was good at it, and it's really cool that folks tune in for it, and I'm able to review a lot more things and just talk about a lot more things in general if I don't have to write everything down, because of course it is more time consuming to do that, and there's more steps. Like, I actually think, I don't know, I'm a pretty fast writer. Like, if I was just doing a blog, I could probably put out as much content as talking in front of a camera, but there's more steps. I have to write the thing and then read the thing, and that makes it take if not twice as long, time and a half. So but yeah, no, I get into these kind of brain freezes where I'm just like, oh man, I'm not the orator that I wish I was. And sometimes, folks will send me a message and they're like, Cap, you're so articulate. And I'm like, who have you been talking to? Like, it's a nice thing to say, but, so anyway, yeah, I can get a little bit nerve-wracked sometimes talking off the cuff because it's not my forte. And for a long time, I said, I want to keep doing this so that I get better at it. I don't mean to be too hard on myself and be too self-deprecating. I don't know how much better at it I am than I was, 9 years ago. But anyway, here we are. But yeah, folks, thanks a bunch for listening to the rambling. What else have you got, Danny?
From Donnie St. Pierre, are you and Eric going to review the new Halloween film?
We are. In fact, I think it's safe to go ahead and mention this now. I don't know how far in Eric is, but I have been watching through the Halloween franchise, and I'm going to talk about those movies some on the next Omnibus. It's been a few weeks now, so I don't know how much I'm really going to have to say at the time that we record that. I wish we'd been able to do it 2 or 3 weeks ago because it was more fresh in my mind. But oh, what a weird franchise! Every movie in that franchise has a new interpretation of how the last one ended. Practically, I mean, it's really funny. I don't know how much of that you've seen, Danny, but it's hysterical. What's that?
Most of them. I'm a big horror fan, actually.
Oh yeah, I knew that, but I didn't know how much of that one of that particular franchise you knew.
Have you seen 3? This season of The Witch, and that's like the one I haven't seen.
Yes, I saw 3. It's It's nuts. There's a song in that there's a jingle that gets stuck in your head. You just want to kill yourself. I'll talk about Season of the Witch. And the new movie is going to be weird because that will technically put us in the 4th Halloween timeline.
Yeah, it will, which is weird.
Because 1 through 6 are one continuity, and then you get to and I'm not counting Season of the Witch when I say that, because Season of the Witch is like a separate out of continuity thing that has a couple of scenes with the original Halloween on TV, which means that Halloween is a fictitious piece inside that universe.
Well, originally the Halloween franchise was meant to be anthology.
To be anthology,
it
right?
was supposed to be something new every one, but after the success of the first one, they went ahead and did something else with Michael Myers for the second one, which I personally think is a mistake. If you're going to try to sell it as an anthology, you need to do something different after the first one so people know it's an anthology to begin with.
Oh, of course. Yeah. No, it was nuts to try to go into the anthology right after that.
Yeah. But anyways, I forgot what my train of thought was. But yeah, I think retroactively they try to fit Season of the Witch into the continuity by using some kind of curse from it that's in it that they bring back in a later one, which makes no sense because Halloween is on the TV. I guess you could try to play it off as some kind of. I don't
think that the curse thing had anything to do with Season of the Witch, does it?
I haven't seen it. I did some research looking through like Wikipedia.
Oh, I'll have to look into that. That was not clear in the film. I've watched now through H2O, so I've watched all the way through 6, and I didn't pick up on that if that's what's supposed to be going on there. But yeah, obviously, and I'll talk about this later on, but obviously trying to come up with some kind of an occult explanation for Michael Myers kind of defeats the purpose, and retroactively made a lot of things not make sense. But we already, I don't know, things already didn't make sense by that point. So I mean, the damage was sort of done. But yeah, so you have 1 through 6 for a continuity, and then H2O reboots from after 2, so 1 and 2 count, but nothing after that does. And then you had a straight up reboot with 2 movies called Halloween and Halloween 2, and then now we're in a 4th timeline that counts only the first movie and not 2, as far as anybody can tell. Yeah, it seems like 2 didn't even happen in that, which is going to be really weird in my brain, because whether you like what 2 does or not, those first 2 movies take place over one night, so you have to count half the night and not the other half of the night. And I've seen an interpretation of the rest of that night, and now I'm gonna see a movie that takes place 40 years after that and only counts half of that night, and that's just weird in my brain.
Yeah, and I think from the trailer, it seems like they're obviously going to make a very big point of saying it's only taking place after the first one, excluding anything that happened in 2 and on. So I hope that what they do is they either open the movie with some kind of clear explanation of what happens for the rest of that night, or at some point in the movie they make it clear what happened in the rest of the night. Just something so we're all on the same page, because this is one of the things I am completely fine with rebooting a continuity and still setting it in the continuity of the first movie, as long as you make it clear what counts, what doesn't, going on forward. I think it's a really interesting
the Superman Returns problem.
Yeah.
They kind of have your cake and eat it too. Yeah, I mean, just play straight with the audience and make it clear what exactly counts. And it seems like that's what they're doing. It seems like the mission statement of that movie is to be as pure to the original concept as possible, and keep Michael Myers as the boogeyman. And it'll be cool to see if they manage to pull that off.
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant because the original, how I've always interpreted it, original Michael Myers is straight up force of nature, and that's what they talk about. So him being in a prison kind of immediately throws my mind back to the Rob Zombie remake, which kind of humanizes him a little bit more than just that force of nature. So I'm kind of leery about if he's supposed to be a force of nature. Were they really able to get him in a prison or anything? So I'm kind of worried about that, but I'm open-minded to see how they do it.
If they do it right, he's in the prison because he wants to be there, right?
Yeah.
Because he's in a mental institution for 15 years and just bides his time and then leaves that night. And that's, I guess I'm just reviewing this now. That's that's one of the kind of confusing things about the first movie into the second one, where if you just left it as it was, it's ambiguous and we can kind of guess at things and imagine stuff and it's fine. Once 2 calls attention to the idea that he waits for 15 minutes, 15 minutes for 15 years. He's there 15 minutes and he leaves. He didn't even have time to eat a sandwich. He's there for 15 years and then leaves very deliberately. Wouldn't he have to have a reason? Wouldn't there be a very specific person that he's going after because a certain number of years has passed? And that's why they make Laurie Strode his sister. I don't like the sister thing. I don't think it needs to be that. But at the same time, the one big question that doesn't really make a lot of sense about 1 is, why does he wait 15 years? Why does he do that? So if you can buy that in the first movie, if you just make that a gimme, he's a force of nature that just does things, and he waited for 15 years, and now he's decided that he's going to come out and kill people on Halloween again. Danny, why couldn't he have done the same thing for 40 years?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point.
He could have just bided his time in prison for 40 years.
Yeah, I guess because I always look at that first one as supposed to just be something that's like an anthology force of nature thing. I don't really think about the motivations behind the character of why he would wait. So yeah, going into this one, it does make sense that he would just wait.
I don't know that I would have thought about it either, but then the second movie is all about that.
Yeah.
They make it about that.
I'm going to have to go back and rewatch at least a few of those because I'm really rusty. And you're bringing up stuff that I completely put out of my head when I'm thinking about them. I just go back to the main things from the movies of whether I enjoyed it or not, or the big scenes from it.
But anyway, I could talk about that all night. Let's continue on, shall we?
Mr. Roboto has another super chat. He says, does Scott Pilgrim count as a superhero?
Eric and I have had this conversation. I would say no. I don't think he's really a superhero.
I haven't read it or watched the movie, so I have nothing to add to it.
Sure.
So,
yeah. I mean, he's not really going out fighting crime. He sort of kind of seems to have powers, but in in that movie anyway, because I've not read the book, but I know it's supposedly pretty faithful. It seems like a really heightened kind of world that is kind of ambiguous as to how much of it is, sort of open to interpretation, like in our characters' heads, like the way they're perceiving the world versus the way it actually is how I saw it. I'm not sure that a lot of things in that movie that are happening aren't kind of metaphorical for things that are really happening, but and it's been a long time since I've seen it, so I might be talking out of the other side of my face right now. But I remember I've only seen that movie like 1.5 times, but that's what I remember thinking about when I was watching that. But yeah, I don't believe he's a superhero.
Okay, the next question from Draven G. Hey Cap, where do you think the comic book movie world would be at today if George Miller's Justice League movie that had been made and came out in 2009 as originally planned? How would it have affected the MCU?
Well, it just depends on quality and whether people latched onto it, right? If it was great, or if it made a lot of money and people really liked it, it could have made Marvel feel the need to try to rush Avengers harder. I don't know that history works out anything like the way it did, right? We might have just had two superhero universes on the big screen that were both popular and were kind of going at it this entire time, which could have been really good, for the industry. I mean, we could be in kind of a better place than we're at now. It's honestly hard to say. Who knows? It all depends on what the quality of that movie was. But you would have had real competition all the way up. The other thing that would have been really interesting about that too is if that had happened, you would have had, at least for a minute, a cinematic universe with DC happening simultaneously with a separate Batman universe that doesn't fit in it, and that we've never done.
I think it would really just depend on what the quality of that film was. If it was great, like you said, it probably would have made Marvel Studios rather go a little bit more gung-ho of going straight into Avengers. Because at the time, they didn't really have the competition of a full universe coming at them where well, there's already a Justice League out, so we got to rush to meet the market demand of doing Avengers. And they kind of benefited by having the time to really let that build as organically as it could have, doing 4 separate franchises coming into one. If there had been the Justice League that started and then branched out into doing individual franchises, I think a lot of the public perception of Marvel would have been, well, DC just did it. They were able to put all these characters on screen and make it work. Why do you feel you have to seed everyone before we actually get them? And that could have created an interesting dynamic of maybe Marvel would have switched up their game plan and not been as successful as they are, where they really haven't had the competition in the market they're in right now of combining everything else. And now everyone's trying to play catch up. At that time, it certainly would have made Sony buckle down and really try to make it a cinematic universe like they tried with the Amazing Spider-Man reboot. But they probably would have tried it a lot sooner, which is kind of weird because they tried that as soon as they could with that franchise.
There's absolutely no reason that Warner shouldn't have been in front of the pack, because they were doing superhero movies before there was such a thing.
Exactly, and they own everything. Within their universe.
You're right. They have all their stuff. They don't have any rights issues. It's wild how many times they've dropped the ball and how lucky Marvel really got with Iron Man and Favreau, given how weirdly hobbled together that movie was, but then ended up being great and something special. Like, not only did Marvel manage to do what DC couldn't outside of Batman and Superman, and for the longest time, not Superman even, with a character that a lot of people didn't care about, that they with Iron Man, they made a mainstream giant A-list character. They did it hardly without a script.
It's a real Marvel method with that movie.
That's exactly right. No, that's hilarious. It's like they started shooting things and they put the dialogue in later. That's not true, but you know what I mean.
Just a whole lot of ADR.
Yeah, it's crazy how much of that movie is improv, and that they got out in front of DC, and DC couldn't save it with Green Lantern, like they should have. I mean, Green Lantern is kind of the more interesting case for me, where it's like, I mean, don't get me wrong, if Justice League had happened, it could be a whole other ball game, but Green Lantern was a really good place to start if you did it right. Like that, I mean, that made a lot of sense to me. And
it opens up the cosmic area of the DC universe from the get-go. So you can
start there, because a lot of people made fun of it and kind of cried foul when they were like, well, you're just trying to do Iron Man again. Yeah, in personality and stuff, that was problematic, but they didn't go to an Iron Man like character, except for, I guess, the arrogant thing. But I just mean, like, they started from, if they did more stuff in space, they started from space instead of a more grounded thing. And I like the idea, and I've said this before, of a cinematic universe starting from the team and then, introducing characters and then giving them their own movies. I think you can do that either way. I think the Marvel way works. I think had they done that could have worked. But I also think that Green Lantern is a different enough property that they would have been starting from a different place had they been able to do that.
Yeah, which is another thing. The whole butterfly effect. If that had been great, we would not have Deadpool right now.
That's a great point too. Or we might have, but in a different way. Like it might have come out of something else. Like that might be inevitable because the superhero thing is so popular. I don't know.
Well, because of how much push from Reynolds himself is what led to that movie finally getting made and finally getting produced and finally having money behind it. I don't know if we would have gotten a Deadpool franchise that is as accurate to comic book Deadpool, both in look and both in tone.
No, it would have been a different thing. That's true. And it might have been 10 or 20 years before it finally happened. Yeah,
I still think at the time Deadpool came out, even though we're obviously in the Renaissance era of comic book movies where you can kind of do anything and people will buy it, it still felt like something that was, a big risk because we haven't done the fourth wall breaking character yet. We haven't really tried to parody comic books in a, not exactly a parody way, but kind of poke fun at some of the tropes that happen in comic books, in comic book movies at least. And I don't know if that would have gotten.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I mean the rated R successful superhero movie was a big shock to everybody.
Yeah, and with that we also got the best of the X-Men movies with Logan. So
yeah, no, and that Daredevil had to happen before that would happen. It might have been inevitable that as these things start skewing more adult and with Iron Man, because we're not talking about a world without Iron Man and Dark Knight, like that, like those movies start us in a place, in a way where we changed things, where we start looking at these as potentially, they can be real movies that appeal to people who like movies and not just people who like superheroes, and people who like real storytelling. And so you might have inevitably ended up with successful rated R comic book movies, but how much longer would it have taken if DC and Marvel were both really successful with PG-13 family friendly cinematic universes?
I think if we had started off from a place where both DC and Marvel are doing hugely successful PG-13 family friendly, not lowest common denominator, but general audience type of movies where everyone can go see it, we've proven that it's going to make a ton of money. It would have made it really hard for any well-known character like a Deadpool or like a Wolverine to get an R-rated thing, because they look at it and say, well, there's too much cash to be left on the table to cut off.
That's right. Yeah.
40 peak of our audience of 13 to 17,
and merchandising and all of that. Thomas Edshell points out that once again, this is a chronic illness with me. I said Daredevil when I meant Deadpool. I can't do it, man. I didn't even saw it.
So I'm bad about that too.
There was another video that somebody left a comment on today that I hadn't looked at, or that I'd forgotten I'd made, and I went back and sampled a couple minutes of, and I did it there too, Danny. I don't know how many times I've done this, but there are apparently even other old videos where I said Daredevil when I meant Deadpool, or vice versa. I can't deal with it. Superhero name, they don't even have the same number of syllables.
Dead Daredpool, says Daniel Davis.
Dead Daredpool. Dead Daredpool. Deadpool.
If you could consciously do it, I think every time you mention either Daredevil or Deadpool, you just need to switch the name.
Just to mess with people?
If you're talking about Deadpool, it's always Daredevil. If you're talking about Daredevil.
When I finally get the Daredevil season 1 is Superhero Rewind out, I should call it Deadpool season 1 and just see what people do. And just in that review say Deadpool every time.
I guess Malik already did the thumbnail for it. I was going to say I could put Deadpool in a frame from Daredevil and replace him with him. But
that's fun. Maybe I'll do that for the April Fool's Day video next year. Maybe I'll take the review I did before, and I'll re-record it and say Deadpool every time, or like write this like one for season 2 and not post it yet and just say Daredevil, say Deadpool every time, and then post the real one later. That would be obnoxious, wouldn't it?
It's the only thing more obnoxious than that would be doing a Guardians of the Galaxy Rewind in Groot.
Oh yeah, no, that would be terrible. But I've already done the Groot joke April Fool's Day.
Oh, that's right. You did that for an April Fool's a couple years ago.
Vince and I, quite a while back actually. Yeah, Vince and I, when he was still on the channel, did a GNN where we just said I am Groot the whole time.
Oh man, that's right. So my joke isn't even original, man. Anyways, to get back to the questions. Einstein Jet, did you hear about the Birds of Prey movie they're supposedly making? It's supposed to have Cassandra Cain.
Yeah, I did, and that is potentially exciting. I hope that she is, pretty faithful to the comics, where she speaks with violence, because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I would really love to see something done with the superhero genre, where we're doing a character who just doesn't speak, where we're doing something where we're trying to get in their head, either through other people's perspective or just not get in their head through language at all. I think that would be a really cool flip on what we normally do with these characters. Kelly
Jones says, can we save the long questions for potential future GNN videos? It's impossible to answer as many when you tend to admittedly ramble a lot, Cap. Yeah, sorry about that. I get excited about a topic and we'll talk about it a long time, and I'm not thinking enough about how much time we've spent on things. I don't have a great concept of time sometimes. I apologize. But yeah, the problem is I don't always know what a long question is, like that seemed like a question I could answer in 2 or 3 minutes, and then we kept talking. But I blame Danny, honestly. He also had a lot to say about that.
Yeah, it's my fault. I try to get the questions that maybe wouldn't come up through Cap or Eric or on a GNN that people would like to hear him talk about, but just wouldn't come up anywhere else.
And to be fair,
So
we
that's
only do
my
a
fault.
GNN every 3 weeks, and that probably wouldn't have been one. Like, I don't know if we would do an entire video on what if Justice League came out. Like, we don't do a lot of those kind of what if things. Like, I don't know if I've ever done a GNN like that. Like, what if Justice League came out? What if Green Lantern was good? Like, we've never really done that. So this would be the place we would talk about that. But I apologize for being long-winded. Now I'm going to talk a lot faster. Go ahead, Danny.
Okay, another super chat from John Early. Just keep
That you're doing
making
it.
yourself go faster and faster when you talk. Another life, another love is my fan fiction title. It's okay, cool.
Okay, cool.
I have no idea what the.
And thanks for doing that with another super chat. We appreciate it. We still know nothing about this fanfic. Is it being a fanfic? I'm assuming it's based on a particular property of some kind, but he still hasn't told us that. Do you have any conjecture? Could it be maybe like a Joker Harley Quinn thing?
I'm not getting any clues from that title. Sorry, John.
Sorry, John.
From David Crabtree. Question for Cap.
Yes.
Have you seen the trailer for next month's Peppermint? Basically looks like a Punisher / Death Wish kind of movie with the female lead, but I'm a huge Jennifer Garner fan, so I'm all in.
Oh yeah, now that you say that, I did see a trailer for that in front of a movie. I guess a few weeks ago, and yeah, it looks really really good. I may check that one out. Thanks for reminding me. I forgot all about that. When you mentioned the title, I was like, no, I have no idea what that is. And you said Jennifer. Oh, that's right. I do remember seeing something for that. I love Jennifer Garner. She has not picked the best projects in the last, I don't know, decade, and maybe more. And so I kind of avoid seeing things she's in until I hear if they're good or not. But
yeah, I actually haven't heard about that, but I like the concept of it, so I'm gonna have to check that. The trailer out.
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, from Golden Eagle 407 V1. Hey Cap, what is your most unpopular opinion that you have? Let's keep it. I think he's relevant to the channel, and if you're willing to answer, irrelevant to the channel. So I think it's mostly about comic book movies or stuff you cover on the channel.
Sure, yeah. Well, it's probably my feelings from last year on I mean, usually it's like a big polarizing movie, right? Like for a long time, it was Dark Knight Rises. You know, there were a lot of people who didn't like that I didn't care for that movie. BVS, there was there was an outspoken minority. I think we did hear from a lot of people. Cap, you changed your opinion on that. How dare you? That was a thing for a while. This last year, it's been Last Jedi and Ragnarok. So usually it's just a big polarizing movie that I fall on to some people the wrong side of. So yeah, that's usually what it is. So that the answer to that changes somewhat frequently.
Okay. From Blue Dragon 5, Cap, you have hey Cap, you find out you have 6 months to become a crime-fighting vigilante. How does Catman begin?
Wow. Okay. Can I give you my honest answer? And I hope that he won't mind me mentioning him here. My honest answer is I call up my cop buddy Jeremy Pierce and I ask him to train me. Pierce is some of you guys have heard me talk about him before. He built the Spawn suit, and he's a local police officer who one day sends me a message and says that he's been, this is back in 2013, said this is while we were in the middle of making Spawn Year. He says, hey, Captain Logan, I'm a police officer in the Kansas City area. I just discovered that we live in the same area, and I have been watching Spawn Year on call when I'm waiting for things to happen. And he was listening to Spawn Year. He was watching Spawn Year on his phone in his car, and between calls, and we became fast friends. He invited me for coffee. We went and hung out. He built a mask for a scene we were going to do for Spawn Year, and he's his big hobby is like latex costume making, and he got really overzealous and built the whole costume. And he's the reason that Spawn Year turned into what it did. A lot of the story stuff in that back half is because I had a costume and I didn't want it to be on screen for 15 minutes, and I wanted to build some stuff around it. So that became kind of my muse, and I went to town with it. So anyway, he is a former MMA fighter, and he is a he's like a survivalist. He is like Batman, this guy. And if I were gonna become a crime fighter, I would call him up and get some pointers, and then see if I could get him to be my Ducard. Is how Catman would begin.
I suggest making your emblem like a baseball cap. I was like, Catman, why'd you name yourself after a hat? No, it's actually short for Captain Man. And just have everybody be totally confused.
Yeah, and once I did my several years of training with Peters and anybody else I could manage to train with without letting them know that I was going to be a vigilante. So obviously this will never happen because I'm not talking about it. I would go to Danny Nixon and I would have him design the costume and or at least the emblem. Actually, I would go to my friend Jennifer, who made some of the costumes for Spawn Year, and have her design the costume. And then Danny would make the emblem, and we would have to order 10,000 of each of things so that we didn't arouse suspicion.
Would you get a giant vault to store your one suit in, like in Batman '89?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Would you get a giant vault to store your one cap suit in?
That's like what I would do. Yeah, there'd just be a big vault just for the cap suit. Yep.
Oh man. I want the merchandising rights so I can make all the Catman merchandise in the eventual comic book movie about it.
Can I answer something real quick? I know we've got some super chats. We'll get to them in a minute. Five Keeper 7 Full keeps asking about my food novel. I've mentioned this recently, but because he keeps mentioning it, I thought I would throw it out real quick. So my book is I'm aiming for the end of this year putting it out. I'm still working on revisions. I haven't been spending as much time on that as I need to, but Christmas is my goal right now, and I'm going to be starting a publishing arm of Geekvolution, self-publishing this time. I'm going to publish this one on my own, and I thought about trying harder to get a publisher for it. I kind of want to publish this one on my own and see how well I do with it, and I like the idea of getting into publishing myself. So I'm going to start a publishing arm for Geekvolution. We've already got a logo for it. It's amazing. DJ designed it for us. So these guys have been helping me out, Danny and DJ, figuring out the details for the publishing arm. Danny will attest to this. We've had some extensive discussions about it, and at the end of the year we're going to try to launch that, and then my hope is every year I will publish a novel and publish one or two other books from other people, so I'll be taking submissions hopefully starting next year. But you guys should be able to read that soon, and I don't want to talk any more details about the book itself, but except to say, for anybody that's not aware of it, the premise of it is that unceremoniously, all of a sudden, everyone in the United States becomes walking and talking anthropomorphized junk food. And the whole book is kind of a written history from a bunch of different people's perspectives of people who have either become food or are still human beings living in this country for whatever reason. There are reasons for that. That are having to figure out how to live in a world that is mostly food people, and that's the book, and that should come out toward the end of the year. So
yeah, and when y'all see the cover, it's amazing. DJ has done so much amazing work on.
Well, and you too, dude.
I have, but it's mostly been like illustrating stuff that goes on the cover. He's done a lot of the layout work, and
yeah, but the illustrations are hilarious and they're fantastic.
Thank you, but since people kind of recognize me as the logo guy, I want to make sure DJ gets all the credit in the world for his amazing work, because he is awesome.
He's amazing at layouts, yeah.
To get back onto the actual questions, though, Thomas Edgehill has a $5 super chat. Would you consider next with Nick Cage a superhero film? And have you watched any more of This Is Us? And think you are awesome and smart. Oh, and I think you are awesome and smart.
Oh, also, Edible States of America is the name of the book right now. We've been back and forth between a couple of titles, but that was the initial working title. I still love it. I'm still having a hard time getting away from it, and I think that is probably still going to be what it ends up being called. But what was the first part of that question?
Would you consider Next with Nick Cage a superhero film? The title.
I don't know anything about that movie. I mean, I've seen the cover, but I've never seen it. I don't know anything about the movie.
Have you watched any more of This Is Us?
No, I need to get back to it. I've just been busy watching other stuff. So, yeah. So yeah, if I feel like I need a good cry, I'll put that show back on. But yeah, I was getting kind of addicted to it for a while, and then I just ended up getting stuck on other stuff for the channel and things. And thanks for the kind words.
The next super chat, John Early says it's a slow burn romance story between Barry Allen and Kara.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
you skipped one.
Oh, I did? Oh,
yeah.
I am so sorry.
Mr. Roboto super chat up there.
Mr. Roboto.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Did The Killing Joke hit the mark, Hamill? Also, real-life superhero thoughts.
Did The Killing Joke hit the mark? I'm not sure what he means by that. Once again, try to be more specific. Do we mean the movie? Do we mean the I mean, I've reviewed the book. I love it immensely. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, I think the book hits the mark. I don't think the movie does.
No, not at all. That did not work. I mean, there's things in it that I like, okay, but and I don't even mind the animation style too much, but I mean, I've talked about this before.
Yeah, cut out that prologue, and it's an infinitely better film. It's not perfect, it's not great, but it's better than what it would be if you.
No, certainly, yeah. You kind of have to agree that, but yeah, there's a lot of just adaptation issues. It just wasn't realized properly, I don't think. Also, real life superhero thoughts. Yeah, that's an interesting. I don't even want to call it a phenomenon, and I don't know how much that's even still going on, Danny. Like, there was a documentary a few years back about people who put on costumes and tried to be real superheroes, and I never got around to watching it because people told me it was really super depressing, and I just never ended up watching it.
It's so sad to watch.
Did you see it?
Yeah, like I watched it. I was like, okay, so if I'm remembering correctly, it's a bunch of people who dress up in costumes and go and just kind of like do a neighborhood watch thing. Like those
right. Yeah.
Then we're like, okay, that's cool. You're finding a way to get engaged in your community and do something. And then it kind of takes this turn where things just get worse and worse as like how they're depicted. Like they try to stop stuff and I can't remember a whole bunch of it. I think there's one scene where someone actually tries to stop something and gets beat up. Or gets assaulted somehow. I just remember being really depressing when you look at their actual lives outside of what they're trying to do, and then someone actually gets hurt doing it. I think, if I'm remembering it correctly, but it's been years since I watched it, so I just remember being really
from what little I've looked into, it seems like the majority of the people who have tried that have been kind of antisocial, socially awkward people who are who do it to try to feel important, and so they're not necessarily there for the right reasons. I don't know if anyone would actually do precisely that for the right reasons, Danny. Like, it's not a thing that I would promote. Certainly, like I guess I'm a little bit more on board with the people who put on costumes and do like social work and stuff like that. I've seen some of that where people go out and do community service and stuff like that. But then the point of community service isn't really to draw attention to yourself. So like I guess the people who do it, like who put on a mask and don't want anybody to know who they are, and they're trying to like set an example or something. I guess I can kind of get behind that. A lot of what I've seen with it on both counts has been either really awkward and kind of ends up defeating the purpose of it because people just think it's silly and don't take it seriously, or have been kind of liabilities, like trying to take the law into their own hands and either don't really know what they're doing or almost know what they're doing too much, and they've had almost like a break with reality. Because there was one guy who did this who was like really well trained, and as far as the training department goes, seems like exactly the kind of person that if anybody was going to do that, maybe should be doing that. But he ended up in some major hot water where he where there was footage of him trying to break up something, and it looked to people like he was brutalizing people, if memory serves. It's been a long time, and he had to go to court, and he had to take his mask off, and it was, you know, it was a whole thing. I don't know, like I love superheroes in concept. I love superheroes in fiction. I feel weird saying it could never work. No one should ever do it. But so far, we've not really seen a lot of public cases where it ultimately seemed to be a good idea. And most superhero stories end up being kind of tragic in one way or another, right? Like,
yeah. I would think if you're going to dress up in costume to go try to make the world better, I would personally recommend going the route that a lot of cosplay people do, where they go and visit like children's hospitals,
right?
Dress up as
that kind of thing.
Superman, Batman, whoever, Wonder Woman, and go visit kids and try to encourage them that way. If you're going to try to make real changes socially and however the world's going, I think 9 times out of 10, the best way to do it is with your face exposed, with who you are exposed, and trying to make a difference in a way like social activists have done in the past. You know, trying to go out and set the example, saying, this is who I am. This is, I believe firmly in this enough that I would want to change the system that's encouraging whatever's going on. I don't know if going around beating up criminals is the best way to go about enacting change. I think it's kind of, it works in fiction because we can tell a story about it and we can make up whatever the ending is. I don't know if ultimately
you have to create a conceit.
Yeah, I don't know if at the end of the day it's as beneficial as other forms of reform could be.
Well, especially because it in and of itself is illegal, and like I know in comics a lot of the time it is too, and there's a lot of cases that are made in superhero fiction where the law doesn't go far enough, and you know, I love that. I forget who wrote it, but there's an early 2000s issue of Batman where Batman says to a cop, you know, if everyone did what I did, I wouldn't be necessary. Like I like that idea kind of in theory, that like if everyone, the idea is that if everyone was out to help everyone else, if everyone cared about what Batman cares about, which is making sure that no kid ever goes through what he did, the world would theoretically be a better place. But things are just more complicated than that. So like yes, you have you have, you know, a government and laws that are not perfect. You have corruption, but I wouldn't endorse vigilantism, because it seems like you're more likely to just make a bad situation worse. You could make the argument to me, you know, well, I saved the person, or I took down a person that otherwise wouldn't be saved or took down, and maybe it was worth it even if I have to go to prison or I get killed or something. But if you got that result once, but then, you know, 10 people died who wouldn't have died otherwise because you were out there, or, you know, you became a liability, that makes it difficult for me to endorse that kind of thing. If you really have to, like, again, I wouldn't endorse vigilantism. If you felt like you had to put on a costume and go out and try to find crime, I think the only way you could really do that, Danny, is to like lurk in the shadows and make phone calls to the police. And that's not foolproof. That becomes that kind of Spider-Man issue of, well, if they don't show up in time and somebody's about to get shot, should you act or not? And that's the reason I wouldn't do that, because I wouldn't want to put myself in that position. And again, you might become a liability. And even in more realistic comics, fewer people get sued than do in real life.
Yeah. And if by any chance anyone watching this is a alien from another world that exploded and you came to this planet and you have superpowers, I don't know. I don't know if what we're describing really fits to your situation, but I'd advise against becoming a superhero, because you may create a culture of dependency on you, and then you get killed by a doomsday.
Now that one maybe was a question we should have saved for Geeks Not Nerds. I have gotten that before, but I would hesitate making a straight up video exclusively about that without doing a lot of research, because I have not looked a great deal into real life superheroes.
Yeah. We've got a super chat from David Crabtree. Oh yeah, that's true. Kidding. Orville Season 2 trailer. I'm so excited for December. Might be my most anticipated TV show of the upcoming season.
Oh yeah, that's true. You know about that, right, Danny?
Yeah.
I talked about this on the last Geekvolution After Dark, but and maybe I've mentioned it here too. But we have this. He's referring to a thing that I accidentally posted on YouTube social media, where it just said, "Oh yeah, that's true," and then we had a lot of comments and thumbs ups on it. I still don't know how in the world my phone ended up doing that. Yeah, I'm excited about the next season of the Orville as well. I only saw that trailer once, and I forgot to talk about it on the last Captain's Log, so I don't really want to speak to it right now because I don't remember a whole lot of what's even in it. It just seems like more of the same in a good way, and they're finally going to go do some exploring, so that's exciting. We kind of do the TNG thing in the first season of the idea is to explore, but we just go to planets that where everybody knows about us already. So it's cool that they're gonna kind of have their cake and eat it too, and do the actual kind of Star Trek concept with that second season. I'm a little bit sad that the girl with the super strength, whose name is not coming to me right now, is going to be in fewer episodes next season, because I guess that actress is in another show right now. So that sucks, because she was one of my favorites. But I'm going to try to go back and rewatch the first season before the next one comes out, because I loved it, and I would love an excuse to do that, but also I want it fresh in my mind when the next season comes out. But yes, I am stoked. I wish it was coming out earlier than that, but I think we're getting are we getting more episodes or fewer episodes? I guess I don't even remember. But anyway, I'm excited about that. And I talked about this on the Captain's Log today, but I'm really intrigued by the Star Trek Discovery Season 2 trailer, and it looks like they could be turning things around a little bit. And even if they're not, I'm just impressed with the trailer they cut, because I wouldn't think that anything could make me want to turn that show on again. And I have to see the guy playing Pike. He looks fantastic. So I'm impressed with them, because they made me want to watch at least one more episode of that show.
Nice. The next question, Fantasy
Alara,
World.
yeah, that's her name. She just wasn't coming to me right now, because I have like 60 different shows and properties in my head right now.
Fantasy World says, "Hey Cap, what kind of announcements do you want to hear from Morphicon, and have you been to one?"
Oh yeah, I was at Morphicon a couple of years ago. We have some videos from that show up on the channel. My 8-year-old, who was 6 then, Jason, interviewed several actors from the original series, and we made a video about that. That was really fun, but and it was wonderful. Morphicon is probably the best convention I've ever been to. I absolutely loved it. It was so much fun, and really well organized. Really great convention. And I would have liked to have gone this year, but I'm not gonna pay to go to California every 2 years to go to that show. There's other things I had to kind of stop myself. I really wanted to save up and do it again, and I was like, there's other things I should probably be doing. But I may try to go to the next one. I loved it. As far as announcements from that show, I'm not really expecting anything. I guess I would have said what exactly Hasbro's doing with the movie franchise, of course, but they came out and I talked about this on the Captain's Log today too. They came out and made it pretty clear that they're actually doing a sequel to 2017, which is not what I thought they were going to do at all, and I called that completely wrong. Unless follow-up does not mean follow-up. They may announce something about that movie. That would, that could be exciting, but that's about it. I guess it would be cool to find out, and maybe we'll get this, what exactly the next we know things about the next series. So I guess it wouldn't be that either. I just want to see with the next show if Hasbro turns things around a little bit and brings the spark back to it. We're not going to know that until we actually get to watch it. So I'm not sure what else they could announce. There may be some comic stuff. Danny, let's do just a couple more questions, shall we?
Okay. From Cinemographic. Hey, Cap, would a Rewind United on lucky number 11 be out of the question for you?
Lucky number 7?
11. That's
I don't know what
the title of it.
I don't know what that is.
I know it by the name. Let me look up the plot synopsis for it, because I've never actually seen it myself.
Yeah, I have no idea what that is. So, and I don't know if I want to answer that question based on a plot synopsis, but...
it's a crime thriller starring Bruce Willis, from what I'm seeing. I hope I'm not looking at the wrong thing.
That would be the second thing with Bruce Willis that you'd have to count as a rewind if it counts. But is that what we're asking? If that counts for a rewind?
Rewind United, so not.
Rewind United. Oh, just would I review it? I don't know what that is. I'd have to look into it.
Okay, a super chat from Mr. Roboto. You could be RL, real life superhero, be Kansas captain, and write about your tales.
I'm glad I had you read that because I would have never figured out what we were talking with real life superhero. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. I would have made myself look like a complete doofus. Yeah, I guess I could. I think I would get killed in about 15 minutes if I tried to go be a real life superhero. I wouldn't mind doing some charity work in costume and move the channel into the charity realm. I've considered doing that. The Rockman, who was here earlier, might still be here. Years ago, designed a Captain Logan costume that's kind of loosely based on the Star Trek TNG uniform, and it's got my crazy hair coming out the top of it, coming out of the top of the mask. It's awesome. I think I've shown it to you, Danny.
I think so, yeah.
And I've talked about for years getting that made. And if I did any of that kind of thing, like if I did more conventions or I did like charity work in costume, that's probably what I would do. I would do like a Captain Logan costume. But Danny, the big thing I wanted to do at one point is I wanted to start a charity for encouraging kids to read comics, giving kids free comic books, and I discovered there are actually several charities around the country that do that. So I've started kind of giving a little bit to some of those charities and trying to let people know about them. But we don't have anything like that locally, so I don't know. Maybe at some point, I'll try to do that. I've got so much else on my plate, and that's a big commitment. And I wouldn't want to do it, halfway.
Yeah. My local Comic-Con is this weekend actually. So when I'm there, I'll look around and see if there's any kind of comic book based charity that's there. Because if there's going to be one that's from the local area, I'd assume they'd be there. So if there is something like that, I'll look into that just to pass the information along to you. Blue Dragon
Cinematographic calls me the Logan Writer. That's a good superhero name.
Blue Dragon 5 asks, Cap, who would you consider your young ward, Eric or me?
Wow.
Me, Danny.
I don't know. I mean, Eric's a little bit closer to like the comic book Robin thing because he lives with me, and I helped him out a lot when he first got here. Just kind of getting himself on, getting his feet kind of back on the ground, living someplace else, and he lives in a bat cave because he lives in a room right off of my basement, which is a bat cave. And he works with me on the channel a lot more than Danny, and usually at night. Like we have like double lives, like we go on YouTube patrol or whatever. So yeah, I guess I would have to say Eric, but I'm seeing Danny as maybe kind of like the second Robin,
Well, I hope not the second Robin. I don't really want to get killed off because the Geek Solution people voted me off.
Another Robin.
Yeah, I'm Tim Drake if I'm anything.
Yeah, well, just to put your mind at ease, we're not going to take a vote on whether or not you should be killed off. So,
thank God.
We're not going to do that.
Just when my sales start to dwindle on my own series, that's when they're going to.
Do you see anything else that we really need to tackle tonight before we adjourn? Because I know some of these were a little bit longer and we didn't get to a ton of stuff tonight.
No, I'm seeing a lot of questions from the same people who asked earlier, and no offense to everybody, but I try to get at least one from anyone who asked.
That's good.
So if I missed somebody, I am so sorry. I tried to make sure I didn't, but I think I got pretty much anyone who asked. I believe so. Oh,
Jeffrey's asking if he can be Jason Todd. He wants to be the Jason Todd of the channel.
He's got a death wish, apparently. David Crabtree says Danny is Batgirl from 66 season 3. Cool. I got a motorcycle.
Yeah, you wear purple. J-Man, how hard are you dreading the inevitable 2-hour rewind on Arkham Knight? A little bit. I am dreading that a little bit, although I think it might ultimately turn out to be really fun to write about with all of its flaws. Sometimes the bad stories are fun to write about, but that might just like really frustrate me because of how great I thought it was and then the turn it takes.
Yeah, I'm interested in hearing that one. I'm not the biggest fan of Arkham Knight. It's fun to go back and play, but I've played City I've gone back to City more than I've gone back to Arkham Knight since Arkham Knight came out, and the story of it is just, it's. I don't know.
If you could get that game we talked about this before, but if you could get that game, forget the story stuff, just gameplay elements. If you could get that game without the tedious Batmobile stuff, but still being able to drive the Batmobile and having the Batmobile Riddler challenges, with how open it is, it's a better game than Arkham City.
Somewhat, I think when I go back to Arkham City, I go back for the I forget what, like the Predator maps and the combat challenges.
I haven't done a ton of that.
I do not like the ones that they've got in Arkham Knight. The best ones are the ones that they port from Asylum and City into it. I don't really feel like the game
that's fair. Much. I haven't looked at a lot of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, flying around the city and flying and driving around the Batmobile is a lot of fun. I do that like kind of passively if I just want to go into that game and explore that world a little bit and not really have to fly around and fight people. But if I go back to play because I want to play with the gameplay, I go back to City because I like the Predator maps and the combat challenges more.
J-Man says Arkham Knight has no good boss battles. I don't remember it having great boss battles either.
No, in fact, it's got really disappointing ones because we get Deathstroke. Spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't played it. We get Deathstroke later in the game after the main story ends, and it's a cutscene with him. We don't get the cool Arkham Origins type of fight where you're actually having to counter and try to,
which was killer, man. That fight is infamous, and people love it.
That was my favorite thing to go back and do in that game, is to play that as well as play the combat challenge as Deathstroke, because they've got one where it just keeps going on and going on, and I think you have to take on 100 different thugs or whatever it is. It was so much fun playing with Deathstroke in that game, or playing against Deathstroke, and then Arkham Knight just crushed my dreams, man. I really wanted more Deathstroke in that universe.
Crushed his dreams. Well, folks, thanks a bunch for watching. That's going to be it for us tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Danny and I will be back with you again next Wednesday night, once again at 9 p.m. Central. So come on back and give us some cool stuff to talk about. We're always excited to do it. Danny, I look forward to this all week long. This is one of my favorite things we do on the channel now. And as long as we've got folks here that want to chat, we will keep doing it for you.
Oh, were you waiting for me to jump in?
I was. I thought maybe you would say something. And,
yeah. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you. Your turn.
It is my turn. That's kind of how back and forth works. Thank you, everybody, for the great questions again. Thank you, Kat, for letting me be here. It's always a pleasure to be here and do these videos. So thank you, everybody.
You guys are great. We sure appreciate it. Tune in more the rest of this week for lots of videos made by myself and my son with more of the Geekvolution mini abyss, lots of reviews, movies and comics and things. So check it out. And in the meantime, I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Danny.
See you later, folks.
Bye.